So we are at 34 minutes past the hour. I think we should probably get started. Hopefully you can all see my screen. The purpose of today's call is, I guess, the first OpenChain AI study group. This meeting is being recorded apparently. And Shane normally says something about the antitrust policy notice, which is here if we need it. But the what I was wanting to get out of today's session really is to think about 2024 around AI and sort of meeting, how we're going to coordinate meetings. It's very late here in the UK and in Europe. How do we want to manage that? And then I'd like to start sort of scoping out what we want to try and achieve as part of the scope for the study group. Rather than try and come up with any form of solutions today, we can do that over 2024. But that was kind of open for discussion. Does anyone else have anything they want to raise at today's session?
I might suggest also maybe a conversation about awareness to broaden the the stakeholdership, to pull in some additional folks that might not be exposed to open source and as a result not knowing about this study group.
Sure, that's probably something we should do before we get into the scope, which I guess will be the majority of the talk today. Okay, I'm hoping people can kind of come off silence and see if we can come up with a form of solution, but we want to deal with the administrative portion that, what we're going to do moving forwards. Do we want to meet monthly or more frequently? And then sort of what time zones do we want? Do we want this time zone? Do we want a rotating time zone? So I just want to kind of get people's thoughts before we kind of can confirm what we want.
I would see a value in meeting more frequently than once a month. I think at least to start out with, when we set things up, when we set going, when we have momentum, it seems to make sense for me to meet more often, if not every week, so at least every other week.
I'm in agreement. I think more frequently as this evolves, we're more likely to achieve more things. If we meet weekly, do we want to rotate the time that we meet? So 1 week is, say, this time, and then the week after is, I don't know, early morning in Europe time.
I'm in favor of making everyone equally, miserable. So rotating sounds fine.
Yeah, and we have a pretty international initial group on this call, right? So we should try to do that.
Yeah, I think that's worked out well with the other teams that the Linux Foundation's had going for a number of years, is to rotate it like that, give everybody a chance to participate.
Great. Okay. Well, I will propose a weekly session starting probably the second week in January, and we can alternate this time versus say early morning UK time for the next week. Minutes can be shared and people can catch up as and when. One thing I'm keen is that we don't kind of have two study groups going on in parallel, those meeting one time and then those meeting another time, but we can check in to see how we're doing with that. Great, I can put something in the calendar starting early January then, unless anyone has any further objections or further comments. Moving on then, Dave mentioned awareness. Jimmy, did you want to say something?
No, sorry, I'm just coughing. I'll go on mute.
Thanks. Dave mentioned something about awareness. This meeting invite has gone out to everyone on the mailing list for OpenChain. Dave, did you want to make a comment further about how we want to expand the awareness of this group?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a number of like community efforts happening around AI in general, and they're working on different things as far as I can tell. I don't see an overlap between the things that we're planning to work on relative to the AI supply chain and essentially the equivalent to what we've been able to accomplish together in the area of open source. But it might be worthwhile to kind of build some liaison relationships with some of those other groups. And the ones I'm thinking about, yeah, like Partnership on AI would be potentially one. AI Verify, out of Singapore. ML Commons, that's a pretty influential group. They're running on a whole bunch of substantive tests that they're going to, propose, and these are all things that might help on the regulatory side, which are, again, outside of our scope. And then there's some close collaboration we probably want to do with the SPDX folks, who's done some very complimentary work.
Do you have connections with those couple of groups that you mentioned? I mean, I've got connections with the SPDX folks, but some of the other ones, do you have contacts there?
Yeah, SPDX would be a really important early one. The other ones, I haven't been as active in some of the other ones, and there's a couple of them I'm just joining. But ML Commons is one where I have pretty active colleagues that are engaged there. So that's one that we can actually flag early on. And there's all the major players in that one, right? These are the people that are out in the European Union and messaging to the Commission and in DC, and they're very well resourced at this point. So that's probably one good one to hit early on.
And if I may, I would like to suggest that both the software licensing and the software assurance teams are engaged regularly in the development of AI, because AI is all built on software, and licensing and software assurance are two critical items that should be addressed, or at least considered during the.
Chris, was that a little bit more directed at like the scope of work for our work stream, or was that an organization that you're thinking about?
No, I'm thinking about from the organization of work for the AI group, is that those things need to be considered as things are developed, because we've got the other groups like SPDX and the Telcom group is working on things, and software assurance and licensing teams are working on things, and they're all interplay with each other. So I think we just need to keep a open perspective on making sure that what happens in the AI group doesn't exclude the work that people are doing in other areas as well that are tangential to development of AI.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in the Linux Foundation AI group,
yes,
right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. There was supposed to be a connection that we were, going to be making with Ibrahim Haddad as well, who's leading that function to help us, do some, cross messaging.
Just on that topic, sorry, I spoke to Ibrahim just yesterday, and he regrets that he's not able to make this call. He's on a flight, and then he'll be off for a few days. But he's happy about the initiative, and sort of will certainly participate in future events.
Great.
And yeah, again, I'm very keen not to do any overlaps. Ibrahim and I had a chat in Bilbao earlier this year, and is obviously leading the data and AI group in the Linux Foundation. So it's having a clear understanding of what their goals are versus ours. But from what I understand is we kind of have a clear remit. Dave, Jimmy, Chris, any actions from this previous discussion? I mean, I'm happy to reach out to the SPDX AI folks, see if anyone there is interested in joining, and I can participate in some of their AI sessions. But do you guys want to take any actions to reach out to others?
Well, I'm the co-chair.
Oh.
I'm the co-chair for both software assurance and the licensing at Linux Foundation Open Chain team. So I'm happy to interface between the two.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. And then I'll reach out to my contact at ML Commons and see if we can create some awareness.
Great. Any other comments on that point around awareness? And I think as you are talking to colleagues in your network, certainly highlight this group as starting, and happy to hear opinions and voices here. Okay, moving on. We just have 15 minutes. We obviously want to achieve something in AI governance, AI compliance. There's certainly been some good success in the open chain ISO standards for licensing and security. I sense that's probably the direction we want to go, kind of explaining, what good compliance might be in AI. But I open it up for discussion about what people think they want to get out of this working group over the next 12 months.
To start with, I would like a common understanding of what's the governance and compliance issues even are in these things. I feel we do not have that common understanding in the industry currently. There's lots of ideas. There's lots of good suggestions as to what the main issues are, but I don't feel we have sort of a consensus or common understanding of that. And if we achieve nothing else, just achieving that, I think would be huge. If we can start solving those things, then all the better.
And you would, Jimmy, you're looking there for me to explain what I think either my personal or my company's doing around AI, and we open that up to discussion to hear what other companies are doing. Is that kind of the solution to that?
Or what problems we're trying to solve each individually? Are we trying to solve for the same things, or have I, to be honest, have I missed things? Are there things I should be solving for that I'm not solving for? Or, well, it's just starting in that direction, and then working basically forwards from what is the problem to what kind of solutions can we have to that, and having a common framework and a common language to discuss those issues.
Yeah, I also have some hooks into the ISO IEC, and they are currently have spun up a AI work group to study governance and actual AI specifications within the ISO community. So I think that we probably need to be aware of what they're doing so that we're not trying to recreate it where it is common.
Yeah, I agree. There's a number of different frameworks out there, so people can look at the OECD version. OECD actually helped build a big comparison study between different frameworks. In the US, there's the NIST AI RMS, and NIST is going to be coming out with some actual tests on this stuff. China has its own framework around the CAC, and then you have like organizations like AI Verify that are providing these things. Now, what I talked about, in my presentation at the Tokyo event was ultimately all these frameworks, they boil down to a number of the same factors, okay? And it's just a matter of how they're emphasized in all these things, right? So if you take the NIST framework, all you have to do is refactor that a little bit, and then you match up to OECD, and then you take that and you factor it a little bit. Some of the words are identical, and you match up to AI Verify, and then Elmo Commons is built off of those things as well. So there's a lot of commonality. I think we just need to pick, what are the core, most essential pieces of it. Kind of call it minimum requirements, and see if that is workable as to a base spec, as to the governance piece of it, because that's just going to be the overarching process ramification.
I think at the beginning we also should discuss what are we really talking about when we talk about open source and AI, and what dimension does it include. So do we talk about the user interface, about the models, about weights, about the data behind it, open data, open source data, and so on. So I think we need to split this into the different dimensions of artificial intelligence frameworks, because it's not completely comparable to open source software. I think it has more dimensions than open source software and more components.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, because you have the data component piece of it, and then you have the model component, and both pieces can create their own compliance artifacts.
Exactly. So, and the user interface could be open source, but the data is not, or the model is not, and so on. So I think we need to come up with a good understanding what different dimensions do we have, and what can be open source and what cannot, and what different combinations there can be.
And those different combinations, we might be able to suggest, different governances around different combinations. I'm aware that a few people have made comments in the chat. Jimmy, I would suggest, yeah, okay. Andrew, I agree with Jimmy. I don't even have a handle on the problem space yet. IP is one issue, but privacy, bias, safety, and so on are also relevant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Matthew.
I think all the.
Go ahead, you guys.
No, you haven't talked yet. Go ahead.
Go on, Mary.
Okay. Hi, this is Mary from Microsoft, as opposed to the other Marys in the group. the three Marys. I know defining open source AI is going to be tough. There's a lot going on in that space, and we don't necessarily want to diverge off into our own definition, but we do need some sort of way to define it so we can at least talk about it in our group. I was thinking that the scope of the AI study group, at least one thing that we ought to consider completing is, does the open chain specification already allow for the inclusion of open source AI components, or do we have to tweak it a little bit, right, to make sure it applies to AI components also? My hypothesis is that it will apply, without much modification, if any at all, but it'd be something that we, have to discuss.
And sort of having a think of sort of internally into my company, and when we talk about AI, we've gone back to first principles on a lot of the thoughts, and it might be, as you say, Mary, that the standard already covers a lot of the things that we want in terms of, do you have a policy, and are you checking things and having governance around that? But it might be something specific to AI that we need to modify and adapt. So yeah, good point about the comparison of what we already have, because we might not need to create a whole new standard or something along those lines, and maybe we add something to one of the standards if need be. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. summarized it well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've been looking at open source, both the tools and the models for quite a number of years now, from a IP licensing standpoint. And there is quite a bit of open source software in the tools, and there's quite a bit of open source software in the model. Some of it is ingested, as we've heard quite famously. So I'm not sure how the open source software is different than regular software from that perspective, but it's worth taking a look at it.
Indeed. So we've probably got 5 minutes left. I'm aware that some people haven't spoken. Do you want anyone want to say anything that hasn't said anything already? No. Okay then. I think this is a good start for kind of 20 minutes of a discussion point. Maybe in the new year when we start setting up the next calls, we can go through these 5 points, or maybe the fourth and fifth are on a similar theme there, and see if we can start coming up with ways we can try and solve them, or dig it down into these points in more detail. Does anyone have anything else they want to add? Has this been a good start to this study group? Are we keen to continue and try and find reasonable solutions to help us all out for the whole supply chain?
Yeah. Should we do some kind of what do you call those things? A doodle to find a couple good times for alternating calls?
We can. I've never done a doodle poll before. Are they straightforward, Dave, or are you volunteering to do that?
I've never done one either. I've been
Okay.
recipient of one, but I can take a look at how to figure that out.
Dave, I'm more than happy. If you've not done it, I'm more than happy to try and figure something out, and I'll send it round. I don't have everyone's email address from this call, so could you all take an action now and email me, or I don't know how I get a list of all the participants. Does anyone know that?
Shane should be able to generate a report for you.
Okay.
Based on the meeting and based on the LFX platform.
Great. I will go to Shane with the list of the 10 names here and get him to send me a list of everyone's email addresses so I can do the doodle poll. Great.
And you
Great.
don't need the people's addresses for doodle poll either. You can just send it out to the email list, and whoever gets access to the doodle link can then just fill in their information.
Good shout, Jimmy. Okay, I will send it out to the meeting invite mailing list here, and we'll go from there. Great. Well, if there's
Cool.
nothing else, I will leave you to the rest of your day, however much is left of it. Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.